So after I explain the graph on this slide, I'm going to quickly flip through the next few slides showing the 2010 to 2018 bay inflow. And these are consistent with the conceptual hydrographs that Barry Nelson just showed you. This work is from Reese, Howard, and Rosenfield 2019, published in San Francisco Estuary and Watershed Science. It is a historical accounting of what controlled exports and outflows and is generally consistent with work by the state water contractors and also work by Greg Gartrell. And I say generally consistent because Gartrell showed that the salinity control water is increasing over time, and there might be some differences, slight differences in details. And that's the red area at the bottom, the salinity, hydraulic salinity barrier. The green area is D1641 required flow on top of the red. Purple is ESA required. Now the light green and the light purple are within existing export capacity. Since our 2019 paper, I took this farther and parsed the AUO, or additional uncaptured outflow, so in the outflow in excess of export capacity, into dark green or dark purple. With a future change in infrastructure, that dark purple is mostly unprotected because aside from Fall X2, it relies on export restrictions such as OMR. So aside from Fall X2, the percent protected in the table at the top does not include the dark purple. Now I know the ESA protections have changed, and I've included this period was all under the 2008-2009 BIOPS, but I've included in the table LTO alternative 2 with no VA and no TUCP for reference. And because there's climate change in that modeling, the unimpaired is sometimes different as well. You can revisit these later, so I'll go through these quickly, but as we go through, I want to focus on how little of the hydrograph D1641 in green is protecting. Okay, so 2011, it was a wet year with very little of the hydrograph, only the green and the light purple protected from future infrastructure or federal ESA changes. You can see the purple Fall X2 at the end of the water year, which was protected under those previous BIOPS. 2012 was below normal, but it followed a wet year, so there's some Fall X2 at the beginning of the water year in the purple. Again, note how little green and red is protected by the Water Quality Control Plan. 2013 was dry, but it had a wet fall, much like this year. And most of the high flows prior to February were unprotected. And then 2014 was critical with TUCPs. And you can see in the table, I've included, again, LTO alternative 2 with no TUCP, and that would actually protect more flow than historically occurred with the TUCPs. 2015 also was critical with TUCPs, with very little protection from the Water Quality Control Plan in green. So 2016 was a below normal refill year following the drought, and those years, or ending the drought, and those years like 2016 and 2009 have some of the lowest percent of unimpaired flow. So I would argue that higher carryover storage during droughts could not only help cold water pool, but could also go a long way in protecting the bay inflow hydrograph from aggressive refill in years like this. Because if your storage is higher, you're not needing to fill it up as much in these years. All right, 2016 was very wet. So you can see Fall X2 again at the end of the water year for a wet year. Very little of the hydrograph is protected in green, red and green. And the last one, 2018, below normal following wet. So again, you get the Fall X2 at the beginning of the water year, but the Water Quality Control Plan in green and in red is doing very little to protect outflows from future infrastructure and ESA changes.